Redditors who killed someone. What happened? I killed my sister's unborn baby. We were teenagers and playing softball. I didn't know she was pregnant, and I hit a line drive she pitched to me. It hit her right in the abdomen. That is awful. I can't imagine how you must have felt. I hope you don't blame yourself. It's pretty fucked up. One friend was there when it happened, and knew about it, and I recently told my boyfriend about it. Other than that, I don't talk about it. I'm in a bad place today and just started answering shit on Reddit. I'll never forget that night. He broke into my house and killed my sister before I could find a gun and shoot him. He was sent to the hospital and tried for first-degree murder, later sentenced to life imprisonment. It's been 5 years, and even to this day, I still blame myself for being too slow. I wish you find peace. It was not your fault. I'm so sorry. That's unfathomably awful. Have you tried getting professional help? I didn't kill someone, but my aunt and her husband did. They were camping and asleep in their tent. In the middle of the night, some strange man slipped into the tent and got on top of her. She woke up and started screaming, so her husband grabbed his gun and shot the guy. They both immediately ran out and went to tell the man running the campground what had happened. By the time police got there and checked the tent, he was dead. Apparently the guy they killed had been arrested exactly a year prior for breaking into a tent full of kids at some other campground. Creepy man. I'm glad your uncle was able to save her. Yeah, me too. A guy attacked me at 3 AM while I was walking to work. Literally barreled out of the woods and tackled me onto concrete with his belt undone. He broke 3 of my ribs. I tried to choke him long enough to render him unconscious. And I did. He never woke up. It still bothers me. I was arrested and questioned in the hospital. Uncuffed the following morning after the police obtained security camera footage. I've been asked before how I managed to hold the choke long enough to kill him. I don't know. I may have crushed his windpipe. I have no concept of how long the choke, or even the whole situation, lasted. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. Keep in mind that we need inhibitors to keep us from tearing our muscles and tendons off the bone due to how strong we naturally are. Yep. A lot of strength or endurance limitations are not from the muscles, but from the brain. Basically making sure you don't injure them. In life or death situations, it is all thrown out, and your body doesn't worry about hurting yourself. Friend of mine was outside of a bar waiting for a ride home. It wasn't that late at night and he texted me. I drove about 10 minutes to go get him. When I arrived, there were 3 other guys surrounding him, obviously wanting trouble. I ran and tackled one of the guys to the floor. I was completely focused on this guy because he was literally face to face with my friend. We start hitting each other and a bystander helped with the other 2 men. I managed to stumble back on my feet and kicked the guy in the face. He hit his head against the wall of the building and I knew it wasn't a good sound. With my adrenaline rushing, I looked over and the other 2 men were running away. I was the one to call the cops and report everything. I can only imagine how that sound of his skull cracking stays in your head. When his head broke, my heart skipped 2 beats. 2 men broke into my house late at night. I shot them. 1 died. Sorry you had to go through that. Thank you. I don't feel guilty, but it's hard to put something like that behind you. I know what you mean, man. Be strong. I was working as a cleaner at an aged care resident with severe dementia, was sleeping. I decided to mop the floor in her room while she was asleep. Resident woke up and decided to get out of bed without assistance. Resident slipped on wet floor. Carers found her unconscious and called ambulance. Resident died at the scene. Nothing came of it as resident had no living relatives. I got told it was the carer's fault for not keeping a close eye on resident, but I blame myself. I still think about this late at night. The floor could have been completely dry and that resident still could slip in it in stockings or bare feet. Not your fault by a mile. I'm an RN. Falls kill all the time and the only people responsible are the caregivers who failed to keep them safe. Thank you for your comment. It gives me comfort. Unfortunately, death is something that's a part of aged care work. This hits closer to home, having someone's death be the result of my actions. Sometimes I can't help thinking, if I did things differently that day she would have lived longer. Thoughts such as if I cleaned at a different time, or if I stayed in her room longer, she fell less than 10 minutes after I finished. I do not blame the caregivers at all as they were very busy, and had no way of knowing she would get out of bed when she did. I've had to twice. I worked at a gas station convenience store that my family owned an estate with extremely relaxed gun laws, so I always carry a gun. 2 separate times a man has tried to rob the store, once at knife point, dumb as hell, and once with a gun, and 2 times a man has entered the store alive and left dead. I think they assumed I'd just hand the money over since most convenience store employees don't get paid enough to care, but like I said, it was the family business, so I cared a lot. I knew we had cameras in the store, so it was an extremely easy decision, as the police had concrete evidence I was defending myself, and the store, so there was no risk of prison, which is the scariest part of self-defense MO. Haven't lost a second of sleep over the bastards, and would do it again in a heartbeat. Did it cost you anything in lawyer fees? My biggest fear is they try to arrest me anyway. Home invasion. Physical altercation. I knocked him out, got my gun, shot once, he died. Police called it castle doctrine. I have no guilt. He made me kill him in front of my 7-year-old son. Hopefully your kid doesn't suffer any type of PTSD or anything. Shooting is traumatic to a kid, no matter whom you are, and whom is getting shot. I witnessed a murder when I was 5 years old. My neighbor was getting the mail and a man pulled up in his car, got out, shot him in the head, shot him a few more times, then got back in his car and drove off. I'm 33 years old and that still gives me nightmares. What is so strange to me is that I don't remember being scared, I just remember understanding it. It terrified me more later in life than it did when I witnessed it. A childhood friend suffered liver failure and was on a breathing machine. When she breathed her last, her father could not bring himself to turn off the breathing apparatus. So, I did. And then the men from the funeral home came. They were very polite, and we gave them all the info they needed for them to do their job. Her stepmother stayed at the house while I took her dad out for ice cream, just to be away from the scene. It was a warm summer night, and we walked and talked, and had ice cream at the local Sweet Frog. You may think that might not qualify, but there is a moment of finality when you switch off a friend's oxygen machine. About 6 months after, I was visiting a friend, recounting the story, and suddenly the dam burst and I cried for hours. This just shows how considerate you are. Sure, there's no way for a normal human being to take another person's life on purpose and not feel guilty about it, but you were ready to sacrifice your mental health to put an end to another person's suffering. My husband and I only had one car at the time, and I had to ride with him to work one morning around 4 AM, so I could drive back home. It was raining, and the road wasn't lit. We were just chatting with one another, and I was reaching for the CD album for some tunes. I looked up for a moment and thought I saw what looked like a crumpled up blanket or trash bag or something in the road, but I couldn't make it out at all. My husband was driving and couldn't see it at all. Neither of us got to see for sure what it was until the headlights got close enough, and by then it was too late to react. It was a man, curled up in a ball in the middle of the road, dressed completely in black clothing. I remember crying out just a half second before we struck him and went over him. It hasn't even dawned on my husband what had just happened, and I was screaming and crying in horror. My husband was also very distraught and was shaking. I told him he has to call 911 and get help, so he did. He got out of the car and went over to check on the man and see if he was responsive at all. Nothing. The ambulance and cops came. They asked us a bunch of questions and the whole routine. The news crews came out to film everything. That man died on the way to the hospital. This haunted me for over a year after it happened. A month or so later we found out that the man had abandoned his truck at a nearby gas station and walked away. He wasn't from the area either. We learned that 2 of his friends came down here to talk to him and tried to get him to go back home with them and get back into rehab, but he had refused and said he wasn't coming back. There was a lot of alcohol and meth in his system. I don't know what that does to a person when those things are mixed, but somehow this guy found his way into the middle of a poorly lit city street and curled himself up. I'll never know why he was there. I'm still afraid of driving on rainy nights. I don't think I slept well at all for a while afterwards. I have to travel that same road to work, and now I always think about it when I pass that spot on the road. Iraq. I didn't want to die, so I shot them before their bullets hit me. All the war answers are breaking my heart. I'm so sorry, and I hope you're good and safe now. Thanks, it has been several years and I'm doing well. Didn't kill her, but I feel a lot of guilt because I didn't help when I could have. 2 years ago during the spring break of my senior year, an old friend of mine killed herself. When we were in 7th grade, that was around the time my depression had started, and she was the closest thing I had to a friend. She was the person who helped me get through that rough patch in my life. She helped me in one of my darkest times, but I didn't help her. I knew she had suicidal thoughts, but I never reached out to help. I have nightmares about her almost every night. I'm so sorry I didn't help you, Erica. Hi, I've been in a similar situation as yourself with a friend that killed himself while I was also depressed. Please don't blame yourself. Your friend had depression, and helping someone cope with their illness is hard, especially while you also have depression. Simply offering friendship during their lowest point makes you a beautiful person.